I never planned to visit the year 2250. That morning, I was simply testing a classroom module, an immersive simulation designed for my history students. I had taught for over 20 years, and though I knew every line of every lesson, I still loved the quiet thrill of time travel, even if it was only simulated. But on that particular morning, something in the code malfunctioned, or perhaps something in me did. One moment, I was standing in my modest teaching pod in Boston, 2149, watching archival footage of the Great Reunification. The next, the simulation began to pulse, flicker, stretch. My surroundings twisted into a liquid blur of light and sound. When I opened my eyes again, the room had vanished. In its place stood a city I didn't recognize, sleek, strangely silent, and bathed in an amber glow that felt neither like sunrise nor sunset. The date etched into the side of a building read, May 17th, 2250. I stood still, afraid to breathe, afraid to move. Everything looked familiar in form: tall buildings, pedestrian walkways, the soft hum of air transit overhead, but the silence was deafening. No people, no voices, just the wind brushing past smooth metal walls. My first thought wasn't panic. It was, why here? Why now? And then I heard it. A soft voice behind me. My voice. Nora, it said, calm and steady. I've been waiting for you. I turned, and my heart stalled. There, standing just 10 feet away, was a woman with silver hair and my exact eyes. Older, steadier, wiser. She was me. She smiled, not the kind of smile strangers offer, but the precise, half-curved expression I saw in the mirror every morning. It unsettled me more than her presence itself. Don't worry, she said gently, stepping closer. You're safe. No, this isn't a simulation. Yes, this is real. She answered my questions before I could even ask them, as if she knew every beat of my mind. Perhaps she did. I staggered back instinctively, my breath shallow. Who are you? I asked, though I already knew. She nodded slowly. I'm you. Or rather, I'm who you become. In 2250. You're 49 now. I'm 82. The world tilted. I tried to find logic, maybe a future projection, maybe a glitch in neural implants. I reached for the emergency abort signal embedded in my wristband, but it was dead. No pulse. No signal. No way out. You always had trouble accepting things you couldn't explain, she said, almost fondly. It's why I had to meet you like this. You won't believe it unless you live it. I studied her. She had my frame, my hands, even the faint scar on the right thumb from when I broke a glass during my first year of teaching. But there was something else, an ache behind her eyes, like time had been both a teacher and a thief. What do you want from me? I asked. She paused, the silence thick. I want to show you who we become, before you decide who you truly are. And somehow, deep in the center of my chest, I knew this meeting wasn't an accident. It was a reckoning. The automatic doors behind her slid open, and with a soft gesture, she beckoned me to follow. My feet moved reluctantly, as if my body knew better than my mind that nothing would be the same after this. Outside, the world shimmered, not with magic, but with terrifying precision. Gone were the chaotic skylines of my time, replaced by vast arcs of translucent architecture, floating above ground on invisible suspensors. Buildings hummed softly with artificial intelligence, reshaping their forms to adapt to daily human activity. The air smelled of ionized lavender, synthesized, of course. People moved in silence. No chatter, no laughter. Just distant eyes and synchronized steps, like dancers in a forgotten ballet. Some wore neural visors over their temples. Others bore embedded silver threads along their cheekbones, links to something unseen, possibly the global cognition grid I'd read about in speculative journals. Drones glided overhead like birds without wings. They weren't surveilling. No one needed to be watched. Behavior here was predetermined, algorithmically optimized. A child skipped by, humming an atonal melody. His eyes glowed faint blue, locked in some private interface. He didn't look up once. My guide, my older self, watched me absorb it all. They call it the equilibrium age, she said softly. No poverty. No violence. No sickness. Everyone lives to be at least 120. I swallowed hard. And emotions? She looked away. There, moderated. We stood in the middle of a square shaped like an infinity loop. A giant sculpture of light flickered above us, a shifting hologram of the human brain, pulsing gently like a heart. I whispered, this isn't peace. It's anesthesia. She didn't deny it. We sat across from each other in what used to be a library, or what I assumed was one. The walls glowed with lines of shifting text, written in languages I didn't recognize. They moved like living things, adapting to whoever entered the space. No books, no paper, just thought-responsive holograms and a silence so thick I could hear my pulse in my ears. She, older me, folded her hands gently in her lap. Her fingers looked thinner than mine, more delicate somehow, but steady. I couldn't decide what unsettled me more, that she looked exactly like I'd imagined myself at 82, or that she didn't look afraid of me. So, I said at last, breaking the silence. "You're me." "I am," she replied with a nod. Her voice carried the same lilt I'd heard in my own lectures, but slower, as if time itself had softened the edges of her words. "How long have you been waiting?" She smiled faintly. "Does it matter?" "Of course it matters. You knew I was coming. I knew you might come. There's always a margin of unpredictability in time travel, especially with early 22nd century tech. But when you activated the portal, the signal synced." I leaned back. "So this is all planned. I'm part of, what? Some grand experiment?" She shook her head. "Not an experiment. A conversation. One I hoped we'd have when you were still open to wonder. Before the walls hardened." My stomach nodded. "Why me?" "Because before everything changed, you were the last person who questioned what change should mean." I wanted to laugh, but couldn't. That sounds poetic. And evasive. It's both. We sat in silence again. The wall shifted, now displaying a memory, my memory. A classroom in 2025. Students arguing about the ethics of predictive AI. My voice rising above them, passionate and unsure. "You remember that day?" I asked. "I am that day," she said. "So, what happened?" I asked, voice quieter now, almost afraid of the answer. "To me. To us." She leaned forward slightly, and in that moment, I realized something subtle but jarring. She hadn't blinked once since we sat down. Not in a robotic way, not inhuman, but in a way that suggested she had trained herself to stay still, to absorb everything. "You stopped believing in people," she said simply. "You kept believing in knowledge, in systems, in ideas, but not in people." The words landed harder than I expected. That doesn't sound like me. It didn't. Not at first. But something changed. Something broke. I tried to laugh it off. "Let me guess. My heart?" She didn't smile. "No. Your will." The room dimmed around us, the shifting text on the walls slowing to a crawl, as if even the architecture understood the weight of what was being said. "You're saying I gave up." "No," she said. "I'm saying you adapted to a world that forgot how to feel, and in doing so, you lost the need to fight back." "That's not fair." "No," she agreed, "but it's true." A silence opened between us like a chasm. I felt cold, not physically, but in that strange way where your memories start to betray you. Where doubt seeps in like fog, blurring the edges of everything you thought you knew. "I came here to learn about the future," I said. "Not to be scolded by it." She nodded. "Then listen. Because this isn't about guilt, it's about possibility. You can still change everything. But you need to remember who you were before survival became a substitute for purpose." I stared at her, at me, and for a moment, I saw the smallest crack in her composure. Not weakness, but longing. Like she wished she could be who I still was. She stood and walked to the far wall. With a graceful motion, she pressed her hand against a faint outline. A door, previously hidden, hissed open with a muted breath of cold air. Beyond it was a narrow corridor lined with glowing panels, pulsing softly like heartbeats. "There's something you need to see," she said. "But I won't force you." I hesitated. "Why the secrecy? What's behind there?" "The archive," she answered. "It holds the records of every version of us that ever came through time. The ones who made different choices. The ones who never returned." My breath caught in my throat. There were others? She turned to face me, arms crossed, eyes heavy with memory. "So many, Nora. Some tried to change the world. Some ran from it. Some never made it back to their own time. And you?" "I stayed," she said. "I stayed to watch what happens when someone chooses comfort over confrontation." I stared at the open corridor. The glow from the panels reflected on the metallic floor like ripples in a pond. It didn't look menacing. It looked sterile. Too perfect. The kind of place that doesn't want to be questioned. "I could just leave," I said, more to myself than to her. "Go back to my time, teach my students, live my life." "You could," she said softly. "But then you'd wonder. You'd spend the rest of your days with a shadow of a question you'd never dared to answer." It wasn't a threat. It wasn't even persuasion. It was truth. And in that moment, I realized the real danger wasn't behind the door. It was in choosing never to open it. I stepped forward. The door sealed shut behind me with a sound too final to ignore. The air inside was unnaturally still, as if the space itself were holding its breath. The corridor narrowed, leading me into a vast, cathedral-like chamber. It was nothing like I expected. No blinking terminals, no robotic arms or glowing time loops. Just silence, light, and presence. Along the walls stretched thousands of transparent capsules, each one softly lit from within, each holding a version of me. Some capsules displayed holograms, scenes playing like memories. In one, I stood at a protest rally, shouting with conviction into a megaphone. In another, I wept alone at a hospital bedside. Yet another showed me in a sleek suit, addressing a global AI ethics summit. All of them were me. All of them were not. I approached one labeled Nora, 2186.17.beta. Inside was a recording. I was older, smiling, surrounded by children, not students, but a family. My voice came through the projection. I chose love. I left the machine behind. I lost tenure, but I found something greater. The image faded. The next capsule was darker. Nora, 2186.03.alpha. This one was bitter, aged, alone, speaking to a mirror. I knew the truth, she whispered. But the truth didn't care. I felt dizzy. The archive wasn't just a record. It was a reflection of choices I never made, of people I never became. And yet, every one of them was me. Footsteps echoed behind me. She, my future self, had followed. You built this, I whispered. To remember? Or to warn? She gave no answer, only nodded. Because sometimes, they're the same. The door sealed behind me with a sigh, and I was enveloped in silence. Not emptiness, but a kind of reverent hush, as if the walls themselves were holding their breath. The hallway narrowed, curving like a ribcage, and every step I took felt like a descent into memory's marrow. Lights flickered to life as I moved forward, illuminating alcoves on either side. Within each alcove was a projection, floating, translucent, alive with motion. Holograms of me, 1,000 different versions of me. In one, I was delivering a lecture to a group of children under a glass dome. The earth outside was dry and cracked, but I smiled as if everything was whole. In another, I wore a resistance uniform, shouting orders to rebels as drones hovered above. In a third, I sat quietly in a dim apartment, staring at a photo of my father I never got to say goodbye to, because I had chosen a different future. Each fragment was a path not taken, an echo of decisions made or unmade. A gentle voice spoke beside me. It was her, my future self, walking quietly, as if not to disturb the ghosts. This is where they all rest, she said. Each projection is a timeline, a choice. Every Nora who ever stood where you stand. I couldn't look away. One hologram showed me accepting a position in the Council of Temporal Ethics. Another showed me arrested for violating protocol, eyes defiant, bruised but proud. Another showed me much older, sitting in silence on a Martian outpost, alone, yet peaceful. So I'm just one of many? I asked, my voice tight with awe and dread. You are this one, she replied, placing a hand on my shoulder. You are the version that chose to know, and that makes you powerful. I looked around. It was overwhelming, dizzying, humbling. But somewhere deep inside, I also felt anchored, not by certainty, but by the courage to be curious. And that, I was beginning to understand, was the first real step toward becoming her. I stood before one of the final alcoves, this one pulsing faintly in crimson hues, as if the projection itself were unsure whether it belonged. The air around it vibrated, unstable, the edges of the hologram flickering like a half-formed thought. Inside it, I watched myself. But not quite. This version of Nora moved with intensity one didn't recognize, eyes wide with the certainty of someone willing to burn down the world for a single outcome. She stood in a council chamber, slamming her fist onto a shimmering table. Her voice, my voice, was raised in defiance. She altered the past, my future self said quietly, her face suddenly tense. I looked at her. You, she answered simply. The projection shifted. I watched as this other me hijacked a temporal gate, bypassed every ethical lock, and leapt to 2035 to stop my father's death. I remembered that year like a wound. He was struck by a stray bullet during a protest. It had shaped me, hurt me, made me choose the path of history, of teaching, of quiet preservation. But this Nora had decided that pain didn't belong in her story. She tried to save him? I whispered, watching the ripples spread through time like a crack in glass. She succeeded, the older me replied. But the world around her collapsed. The gate network imploded. Millions of causal loops unraveled. The council erased that timeline, locked it here. It's a warning. The image warped, showing a version of Earth where cities hung in fragmented space, suspended mid-collapse. Screams echoed, and then faded like echoes swallowed by time itself. I stared, heart thudding. I would have done that. I would have saved him. You still might, she said. If you believe love justifies everything. I felt my knees weaken. The idea had always lingered in the shadows of my choices. What if I could go back? What if I didn't have to grieve? But now I saw the cost. Some choices break more than they mend. I need to ask you something, I said, my voice steadier than I expected. My future self stood with her back to me, her posture a silhouette against the glowing archive. She didn't turn. You want to know if you made a mistake? I hesitated. No, I want to know if you did. That caught her. She turned slowly, her face unreadable. For a moment, I saw the younger me in her eyes, a flicker of who I had been. Idealistic, impatient, full of purpose. But the rest of her face belonged to someone who had weathered storms I had yet to imagine. Do you regret it? I asked softer now, leaving behind the classroom, the people we loved, the version of us who lived quietly. Silence filled the space between us, not heavy but deep, like time itself was waiting. I've replayed that choice 1,000 times, she admitted. Sometimes, in the dark, I see her, the teacher you just watched. I wonder what it would have been like to be her. To stay. To never carry the weight of temporal ethics or watch history unravel under our fingers. Then why did you do it? She looked down at her hands. Because I couldn't unsee what I saw. Once you know humanity's future, its possible collapse, its hidden moments of resilience, you can't go back to grading essays on the Industrial Revolution. You can't unknow time. But what about love? Family? Peace? She smiled, sadly. We sacrificed those things for something bigger. Maybe too big. I stepped closer. So it wasn't worth it? She held my gaze for a long moment. I don't know. That's why you're here. You still have time to choose. The words hit like a pulse through my chest. For the first time, I understood. She wasn't here to give me answers. She was here to ask if I was ready to ask better questions. We sat side by side in the archive garden, a space built to resemble Earth in the 21st century. A place of trees that hummed with light. Artificial breezes that whispered memories of forgotten seasons. Even the scent of jasmine, too perfect to be real, drifted around us like a ghost of comfort. I used to think knowing the future was power, I said. Now I'm not so sure. My future self nodded, her gaze distant. It's not power. It's a burden. Knowing too much steals your ability to live moment by moment. I looked at her. Then why did you keep going? Why not walk away? Let the timeline be. She turned to me, expression thoughtful. Because when you see a fire about to engulf your house, do you turn your back? Even if the act of stopping it could collapse the structure itself. But what if stopping it destroys something else, something beautiful, something irreplaceable? She breathed in, slow and steady. That's the paradox. Every act of intervention is also an act of destruction. You can never see all the ripples. You only see the ones closest to you. The garden lights dimmed slightly, simulating twilight. I could feel time pressing around us, not the ticking of clocks, but the weight of possibilities collapsing into choice. Did we ever save anyone? I asked. Did it matter? She smiled faintly. Some. In little ways. A girl who would have died from a forgotten disease was cured because we nudged a scientist 5 years early. A war ended 6 months sooner because we gave a speech to the right person at the right time. And the cost? She didn't answer right away. Finally, she said, the cost was us. I swallowed hard. You mean we lost ourselves? No. We became someone else. Someone who remembers too much, too clearly, and too often alone. For a long moment, neither of us spoke. The garden around us shimmered like memory. I realized then, knowing the future didn't make you godlike. It made you responsible. And responsibility, stripped of ego, is the heaviest time traveler's burden. Later that evening, I wandered alone through the Hall of Echoes, a chamber lined with reflective glass that didn't just mirror appearance, but intention, emotion, even regret. It was like standing inside memory itself. Every step I took reverberated softly, as though the floor remembered my presence. The reflections didn't mimic me. They shifted with my thoughts. In one pane, I saw myself at 30, full of fire and certainty. In another, at 52, my current self, eyes more cautious, heart heavier. And then, in the largest mirror at the center, I saw her. 82, timeless and tired. The version of me who had seen too much. I reached out a hand to the glass. It shimmered, and for a breath, I wasn't sure which side I was on. The future me stared back with a strange tenderness. Her gaze held no judgment, only understanding. Do you regret it? I whispered, knowing she couldn't answer. Not just coming here, but everything that followed. In the stillness, the silence offered space for answers of its own. I closed my eyes. What had I truly wanted when I stepped into the time capsule? To witness history? To solve mysteries? Or to meet the person I was becoming? And ask her if it was all worth it? The garden, the archive, the warnings, none of it had shaken me like this quiet hall of reflections. Here, I was stripped of mission, identity, and narrative. Just a woman standing in front of herself, wondering if she had done right. And then I remembered something I once told my students. History doesn't ask you to be perfect. It asks you to be honest. I opened my eyes again, and the reflection had shifted. This time it smiled, not out of pride or victory, but acceptance. In the stillness of that hall, I stopped fighting the timeline. For a moment, I simply listened to the silence of who I was and who I would become. The next morning, the city was not the same. When I stepped outside the guest quarters, the air carried tension like static before a storm. People, young and old, moved briskly, their faces masked by calm but their eyes betraying urgency. In the distance, a soft tremor rippled through the ground beneath my feet. Something had shifted. I found my older self standing by the reflective gate, her posture rigid, as though bracing for a truth too heavy to carry. "They've begun the compression," she said without turning around. "The what?" I asked, instinctively stepping closer. "The timeline compression protocol," she explained. "A last resort measure. They're preparing to seal this entire era, our era, off from interference. No one will be allowed to travel to or from this point in history ever again. All timelines branching from here will be collapsed, overwritten." I stared at her. "Why? What happened?" She finally turned to face me. Her expression was neither panicked nor stoic. It was resigned. "They found anomalies. Paradoxes we can't explain. My presence here, your presence, we've altered too much. They believe this period is unstable, unfixable." A cold wave spread across my spine. I was never supposed to stay. No one was. We were always meant to observe, not change. "What happens to us?" I asked. "They'll offer one final choice," she said. "To leave or to stay. But if we stay, we become permanent threads in this sealed timeline. No way back. No contact with the original world." I stepped back, breath catching in my throat. "So this is the end of the journey?" "No," she said softly. "This is the moment it becomes real." In that instant, the question I had been avoiding became impossible to ignore. What did I come here for? The city around us hummed with urgency, and overhead, I noticed a shimmer in the sky, like the world was beginning to fold in on itself. The clock was ticking, not just for me, but for time itself. That night, I sat alone beneath the strange violet sky, watching the timeline shimmer like a mirage overhead. The compression had begun, subtle at first, but impossible to ignore. Portions of the sky flickered like old film, and the familiar hum of the city now carried an undertone of decay. I had always believed history was something we studied to learn from, not something we could touch. But now, I had touched it. I had spoken with my future self, walked among people 2 centuries ahead, and left footprints in a world that should have remained a mystery. The worst part wasn't the threat of being erased. It was the realization that I had started to belong here. I returned to the reflective gate one final time. My older self was already there, her eyes darker, more worn. I saw something in her I hadn't before, not just resignation, but fear. "You're not going back, are you?" she asked. I hesitated. "I don't know." "You should," she whispered. "That's the safer path. The timeline demands it." I looked at her. No, I looked at me. And I finally asked the question I had feared most. "Are you sure you made the right choice when you stayed?" She didn't answer. Not with words. Her silence was a mirror of all my doubts. That's when it broke. The fragile illusion that time was a puzzle to be respected. I realized that history was not fixed. It was alive, breathing, trembling under the weight of every decision we made, including mine. I turned away from her. "I'm going to find the archivist," I said. Her breath caught. "What for?" "Because someone has to remember all this, truly remember it. Not as data, but as a story, as something lived, felt." She didn't stop me. She didn't need to. The fracture had already formed, deep and irreversible. As I walked into the night, I wasn't a time traveler anymore. I was something else entirely. The streets were emptier now, as if time itself had begun to retreat. Every step I took toward the archivist's domain warped slightly, buildings stretching then snapping back, colors shifting like bruises. The world was no longer stable. The temporal fabric, once taut and humming, now unraveled around me like frayed silk. I reached the Library of Echoes, a hollow tower that had once seemed majestic, now trembling at its core. Inside, the archivist stood still as ever, eyes closed, hands resting on a table etched with shifting glyphs. It was said that the archivist had once been human, but now, it was hard to say. It existed outside time, and perhaps outside self. "I need to record a memory," I said, my voice crackling in the air like static. The archivist opened its eyes. "Yours or hers?" I hesitated. "Does it matter?" "It does now." I placed my hands on the memory stone. Images surged. My students back in 2025, my lonely apartment, the books I once loved, the eyes of my future self, the violet sky. All of it pulsed into the archive. But something was wrong. The archive began to fracture. I heard a sound like ice cracking over a deep lake. The floor split. The city outside began to shimmer violently. Time was collapsing. The past and future were trying to override each other. Because of me. I wanted to preserve it, I whispered. And in doing so, the archivist said softly, "You altered the equation." I looked up. "Can it be undone?" "No," it said, "but it can be remembered." Everything began to fade. The air shimmered. My hands felt light. My memories floated upward like fireflies caught in reverse gravity. In that final moment, I saw a child, somewhere in another time, opening a book. My book. My story. A piece of me would survive. And somehow that was enough. There was silence now. Not the kind born of absence, but a dense, sacred stillness, like the breath the universe takes between pulses. I sat on the crumbling edge of the memory spire, where once the horizon was sharp and infinite. Now it bent, like light through old glass, warping between centuries. Time had folded. Cities from different eras now bled into one another. Hovercraft hummed above cobblestone roads. A boy in 22nd century chrome boots kicked a soccer ball past a 19th century lamppost. It was beautiful, surreal, and utterly broken. And yet, I was still here. I no longer knew if I was 52 or 82. The version of me that had traveled to the future had now fused, in some impossible way, with the version of me who had never left. I felt the weight of 2 lifetimes, but also a strange, unexpected peace. In the confusion of timelines and identities, something had clarified. I was not the choices I'd made, nor the things I had lost. I was the witness, the one who had dared to ask, what if I could meet myself? And the answer hadn't been simple or comforting, but it had been real. The future had not given me closure. It had not handed me wisdom like a wrapped gift. It had given me contradiction, conflict, consequence. And in that mess, I had found truth. I ran my fingers along the edge of a rusted railing, watching the stars blink back into place overhead. "I am still me," I said aloud, not to the archivist, not to the sky, but to the time-warped world itself. I remember, and that remembering felt like an act of rebellion, a reclaiming, a small but unshakable defiance in the face of everything time tried to erase. The ruins of the temporal core still glowed faintly, pulsing with residual energy. Most systems were gone, collapsed in the great implosion that shattered the continuum. But one console, ancient and cracked, flickered like an ember refusing to die. I stared at it for a long moment, hands trembling slightly. The archivist had told me once, "Time never forgets, but memory must be chosen." So I chose. I activated the console. Static buzzed in the air, followed by the hum of a communication line reaching far beyond the present. threading through the tangled strands of yesterday, today, and tomorrow. A narrow chance, but a chance nonetheless. I leaned in, recording my voice into the void. To whoever receives this, or to myself in another when. I don't know anymore. I came here seeking answers. I thought the future would explain the past. I thought meeting an older version of myself would bring me peace. But what I found was a mirror. Not a perfect one, but fractured. Honest. You will be tempted, someday, to erase your past. Or rewrite it. Don't. Every mistake, every joy, every grief. These are the bricks of who we become. Without them, you are a hollow echo. I almost became one. I almost forgot how to remember. Hold on to your humanity. Hold on to your now. I paused. My voice cracked. If you find this, please, live with wonder. And never, ever stop asking the questions that matter. The console sputtered. Then, with a final blink, it sealed the message into the temporal stream. Maybe no one would hear it. Maybe everyone would. It didn't matter. What mattered was that I had spoken. That someone, somewhen, might listen. I exhaled. And for the first time in what felt like centuries, I smiled. The portal shimmered again, no longer the chaotic storm it once was. Stabilized, barely. A thin thread tethering this fractured future to my past. One step, and I could return. One breath, and everything would reset. I stood at the edge, my boots grazing the edge of space-time. Behind me, the city hummed in broken rhythms. A world slowed by entropy, but still whispering. A version of myself still lingered here. Older, quieter, perhaps wiser. But alone. Beside me now, she appeared again. Not a ghost, not a dream, but a presence. My 82-year-old self. No longer a mystery, no longer a threat. Just me. I won't stop you, she said softly. Her voice was tired, but certain. You deserve your time. And what about you? I asked. I've had mine. I've made peace. That's why you're here now. I looked at her. At everything she'd endured. The battles fought in silence. The sacrifices made without applause. She had lived with memory like one lives with a shadow, present, but not always kind. Will I become you? I whispered. That's not the question, she replied. The question is, will you become more? We stood in silence for a moment that felt like the width of a lifetime. Then I turned to the portal. Behind it was my world, imperfect, messy, still in motion. I thought of my students, of the chalk dust still on my hands, of the quiet after a good question is asked, of stories unfinished. I looked back one last time. My future self nodded. Go, she said. Not because you must, but because you can. I stepped into the light, and time, with all its riddles and reckonings, closed gently behind me.